I'm Sharon Mondragon, and I am so excited to be on this Instagram tour. I love reading out loud, and so I'm really looking forward to sharing the first chapter of my most recent book, Grandma Ruth Doesn't Go to Funerals, with all of you who are watching. This book is dedicated to my husband's grandmother, so I'm going to start with the dedication. To little grandma, whose heart was too loving, her spirit too strong, and her God too big for the years she spent confined to bed to diminish her influence. Grandma Ruth Doesn't Go to Funerals, Chapter 1. Grandma Ruth doesn't go to funerals. It's not that she gets squeamish or weak-kneed at the sight of a friend or relative laid out. She takes an avid interest in every detail of the deceased, from the tie they put on third cousin twice removed Billy Ray, or how Harriet Tilson's hair turned out. Nor is it that she lacks respect for those who have gone on to glory before her. Grandma Ruth is a kind of person to whom you do not criticize your mother. And it's not that she prefers to stay home and watch Jeopardy instead. Grandma Ruth is bedridden, has been for the past 3 years. Much as she would like to, Grandma Ruth isn't going anywhere. I am Sarah Elizabeth, Grandma Ruth's favorite granddaughter. Being her favorite is a dubious honor. It means I'm her favorite to go to the store to buy birthday cards, visit her shut-in friends, and, you guessed it, attend funerals in her place. Looking back, I realize I've been in training for funeral duty for quite a while. When I was 10, she taught me how to make macaroni and cheese from scratch to take by the home of the bereaved for the reception. By the time I was 11, I had learned to write a tasteful and heartfelt condolence note. I attended my first funeral at 12. Grandma Ruth wanted to take me sooner, but Mama put her foot down and prevailed for once. Now that I'm 24, Grandma Ruth considers me not only fully qualified, but socially obligated to take her place, since she can't get out anymore. I don't think I've missed a single funeral in Rayburn's Ferry, Georgia, since she took to her bed. That's why I was at Preston B. Harrington II's funeral on that unsettling January morning. I would not have gone if Grandma Ruth hadn't insisted. In fact, I tried to get out of it. Grandma, P.B. Harrington was a mean old buzzard. Why, one time when I was visiting, he threw a plate at his wife because his toast was the teensiest bit burnt around the edges. Mrs. Harrington just went back to the kitchen and made him another piece of toast. Now, her funeral you won't have to ask me twice about, but I don't want to take off work to pay my respects to the likes of P.B. Harrington. I said this while examining the tips of my new black peep-toe high-heel pumps. When I dragged my eyes away from my shoes to look at my grandmother, I wished I hadn't said it at all. Her voice was quiet, but her blue eyes snapped, crackled, and popped. Sarah Elizabeth McCready, this funeral is for Mrs. Harrington. She loved him, you know, and he wasn't always a plate thrower. Don't go telling that story around either, she said. You know what they say about gossip. I know. He who spits in the air, I sighed and just barely suppressed an eye roll. Gets it soonest in the face, she said. Yes, ma'am. Further protest was futile. And you'd better not wear those shoes to the funeral if you're trying to discourage Jeff Morris. Even though I'd given in to Grandma Ruth about P.B. Harrington's funeral, I wasn't looking forward to asking for the time off from work. It was early January, and the pace at Crawford and Associates, certified public accountants, was picking up as we headed into tax season. Mr. Crawford, however, was delighted. Well, as delighted as anyone can appropriately be about a funeral. P.B. Harrington was a prominent citizen of Rayburn's Ferry in his day and a long-standing client of this firm. It is such a shame how he went downhill those last few years. Mr. Crawford shook his head sadly. I know you'll represent the firm well at the observances. Take the whole day, Miss McCready. We can hold down the fort here. Oh, and would you take care of ordering the floral tribute? Something tasteful and restrained. Just have it charged to the firm's account. Have the card say... He paused, his eyebrows drawn together as if he were was puzzling over a particularly tangled account. Well, I dare say you know what to put on it. Mary Ruth has given you enough practice over the years. Yes, sir. I headed back to my office before he could add anything else to my Harrington funeral to-do list. So far, this included attending the viewing at the funeral home, making Grandma Ruth's signature macaroni and cheese casserole, dropping it off at the Harrington home place before the service, attending the funeral, interment, and reception, and now ordering flowers on behalf of the firm. Oh, and I'd have to remember to sign the guest book on behalf of Crawford and Associates as well as the McCready family. I walked across the street to the daisy chain during my lunch hour to get a head start on the funeral list. I need to order flowers for the Harrington funeral, I told Abby Claire Harper, who looked something like a flower herself. Her spiky blonde hair and warm brown eyes always made me think of sunflowers. The ink was barely dry on her horticulture degree from nearby Horton Holgate University, but Abby Claire was already making her mark. When she started at the daisy chain, there was talk that she was wasting her degree. There was talk about her hair, too, as nobody ever walked into the Blue Moon Beauty Emporium and asked for hair that stuck up like that. But the talk died down quickly, since her arrangements were breathtaking additions to happy occasions and always struck just the right note at funerals. It was clear that Abby Claire Harper had found her calling. Abby Claire gave me a quizzical look. Her grandmother doesn't usually send flowers. Yeah, she just sends me, I said. This order is from Crawford and Associates. Mr. Crawford says to put it on the firm's account. He said he wants something tasteful and restrained. I imagine the restrained part refers to the cost. That means no roses, Abby Claire said. The service is over at St. Albans, isn't it? I nodded. It's on Thursday morning at 11. I love doing flowers for that church. The rich colors in those stained glass windows give a lot of scope for the imagination. You'll want a card to go with that, she said. This one will go with what I have in mind. Instead of one of the umpteen variations of white lilies that characterize the cards that usually accompany funeral flowers, this one had a classy black Art Deco border. Tasteful, I said, as I carefully wrote, with deepest sympathy, Crawford and Associates, on the card and handed it back to Abby Claire. She clipped it to the order sheet. He'll be missed. The boss tells me he had standing orders for Valentine's Day, his wife's birthday, and their anniversary. I was going to do the Valentine's one this year. They were married over 60 years, so I planned on making it really romantic. And now Mrs. Harrington won't be getting flowers from him anymore, Abby Claire said with a sigh. I was tempted to tell Abby Claire how that romantic man threw plates at his wife when she burned his toast, but I resisted. Considering how many people would be ordering funeral flowers over the next few days, it would be sure to get back to Grandma Ruth. I'm never in the mood for the gossip lecture. I worked late the night before the funeral, so as not to get too far behind from taking a day off. About an hour after the office emptied, I heard the cleaning crew arrive. I worked steadily to the sound of vacuum cleaners and the emptying of wastebaskets. Along about 7, Malcolm Hartwell, owner of Hartwell Office Cleaning, stuck his head around my door. He's been in business for years and years, but he still works alongside his crew at a different office each night to make sure his people are maintaining the company's standards. He has standards for his clients, too. He's been known to threaten to drop clients who make extra work for his people. Mr. Crawford has fielded only one such complaint. It was about the men's restroom here at the firm. The male CPAs took to practicing basketball shots with wadded-up paper towels in there, and couldn't be bothered to pick up the missed shots around the base of the trash can. Apparently, there had been quite a few missed shots. Mr. Crawford tried to take a boys will be boys attitude, but Mr. Hartwell was not amused. Mr. Crawford had to threaten to make the guys clean their own restroom, which brought basketball practice to an abrupt end. Still here, Sarah? Mr. Hartwell shook his head as he came in to empty my wastebasket. It's late. You should be getting on home. I shook my head back at him. I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. I want to finish this account, and then I have to stop by Morris's. I promised Grandma Ruth I'd go to P.B. Harrington's viewing. Stopping by Woods on a snowy evening. Robert Frost sure knew what my evenings are like. Minus the snow, of course, he said with a grin. I remember Mr. Harrington in his heyday. He convinced the partners to hire me back when I first started the company, when I cleaned all the offices myself. He was a hard worker, just like you. Plenty of times I told him to go home to that lovely wife of his, but he would still be hard at it when I finished. Not many in that firm worked as hard as he did. Shame how we went downhill toward the end. I was tempted to say, you don't know the half of it, but held my tongue to keep my promise to Grandma Ruth. Instead, I lifted my feet so Mr. Hartwell could vacuum under my desk. At 7:30, I shut down my computer and headed over to the viewing at the Morris Funeral Home. As I waited for my turn to view the deceased, I took note of the floral arrangements, especially the one from Crawford and Associates. It was indeed tasteful and restrained, but only in appearance. The arrangement of white gardenias and blue forget-me-nots may have looked demure, but the heady fragrance of the gardenias filled the area around the casket. My grandmother would also want to know who had sent what. When I turned my attention to Mr. Harrington, I had to admit he looked pretty good. The face that had been furrowed with deep lines of grumpiness was smooth and peaceful. Even his sharp, straight nose seemed softened somehow. You may think it morbid that I studied a dead man's face so closely, but from long experience, I knew that my grandmother would not be satisfied with, "He looked pretty good, Grandma." She would want the color of his suit, a description of his tie, and whether or not he was being buried with his wedding ring on. He was. After taking inventory of Mr. Harrington, I went in search of his widow. Instead, I found Jeff Morris hovering nearby. "Anything I can do for you, Sarah?" he asked in a low, somber, yet eager voice. "Anything at all?" "I'm looking for Mrs. Harrington," I told him. "She has gone home. She is taking this very hard," he said in the tone of a professional undertaker. His puppy brown eyes drooped sadly. All the Morris men have those droopy eyes. I wondered whether that trait had lent itself to their success as funeral directors or had developed over 3 generations of sympathizing with the bereaved. Either way, it was depressing. "Thank you, Mr. Morris. I will ask a family member to convey my grandmother's condolences." "You can call me Jeff," I heard him murmur wistfully as I headed across the room. I went straight to Grandma Ruth's room when I got home. It's everyone's first stop when they come to the house, to say hey and tell her all the news. Before she was bedridden, we'd go to the kitchen to fill her in while she plied us with cookies. She makes sure my mother keeps her well supplied with them so she can continue to elicit that same Pavlovian response. "So?" Grandma Ruth prompted as I settled myself into the wing chair by her bed. I reached for one of the oatmeal raisin cookies piled on a plate on the bedside table. It had been a long time since lunch. "He looked pretty good, Grandma," I said, just to tease. She snatched the cookie out of my hand. All right," I said as she held it out of my reach. "He did look good, though. He had on a navy blue suit, a pale blue shirt, and a blue and burgundy paisley tie. He didn't look mean or grumpy at all. He looked peaceful and, well, satisfied." That thought had not occurred to me until that moment, but it was true. Was it simply the skill of the mortician? Or had that crotchety old man finished his life completely content with what he had accomplished? And yes, he was wearing his wedding ring. "I should say so," Grandma Ruth harumphed as she gave me back my cookie. "There was never a man more married than P.B. Harrington. Now about Charlotte. Mrs. Harrington to you, young lady. How is she holding up?" "I didn't see her. One of the undertakers says she's having a real hard time and went home early. I spoke to Mr. Bent instead." In Rayburn's Ferry, we have our own way of telling the 4 generations of Preston Bentley Harringtons apart. It all started with William Bentley, Esquire, the founder of Bentley, Harrington, and Nidden. His daughter, Cordelia, married prominent local businessman Preston Harrington. They named their firstborn son, Preston, of course, after his father. Tradition is strong in Rayburn's Ferry, so his middle name had to be his mother's maiden name. The first Preston Bentley Harrington, Preston Sr., now deceased, grew up to be a lawyer and joined the firm. His son, Preston Bentley Harrington II, has always been PB. Then there's the third, But Preston Bentley Harrington III is quite a mouthful, so he just goes by Bent. Of course, that's Mr. Bent to a young person like me. The fourth and final Preston Bentley Harrington is simply Preston. My grandmother nodded. I imagine she's exhausted. She was a bit trying toward the end. A bit trying? I considered reminding her of the plate throwing incident, but decided against it. As I said before, I'm not fond of the gossip lecture, especially since Grandma Ruth is so fond of it. Gossip, I mean, and the lecture. Mama appeared in the doorway. Your supper's on the table, Sarah. I hope you still have an appetite after those cookies. Back in the kitchen, I tucked into pot roast that nearly melted in my mouth. Plan on sleeping in tomorrow morning, my mother said. You look worn out. I can't, I said, around a mouthful of roasted carrot. I still have to make the macaroni and cheese casserole. I thought you could use a break from putting together that everlasting casserole, she said as she opened the refrigerator. The shallow casserole dish that our family always uses for that ultimate Southern comfort food rested on the middle shelf, covered in foil. All you have to do is bake it in the morning before you go. Thank you, Mama. My mother is a genuinely kind and compassionate person. She had to be to survive teaching 8th grade math for over 20 years. She often stayed late to tutor, since a lot of kids went into a tizzy when the X's and Y's of algebra showed up, right after they'd finally figured out numbers. About the time Mama couldn't stand it anymore, Grandma Ruth fell and broke her hip. I was home from college for the summer, and the two of us took care of her. By the beginning of August, it became clear that my grandmother would not be able to get around on her own any time in the near future, or maybe even any time at all. Mama retired from teaching, and she and Daddy moved from the bungalow where I had grown up to the McCready home place so they could take care of Grandma Ruth. The house was built by one of my Daddy's ancestors back in the early 1800s and has been occupied by McCready's ever since. When I came home for Christmas break, I found my room exactly as I'd left it, except it was in a different house. It wasn't that much of an adjustment when all was said and done. I'd spent a lot of my childhood at the home place, heading there after school while Mama talked 8th graders down from the ledge over algebra. The thing that did take some getting used to was Grandma Ruth confined to bed. Before her fall, my grandmother was an elderly version of the Energizer Bunny. If she wasn't on her way to choir practice, getting her hair done, or attending a funeral, she was playing bingo, making quilts, or getting in 9 holes at the country club with her friends. And the kitchen always smelled of fresh-baked cookies because she needed a steady supply to keep us all talking. After her fateful fall, she was ensconced in a hospital bed in the front parlor with a window to look out of and a phone on the table by her bed. Before you start to feel sorry for her, though, may I remind you of the conversation in which I was railroaded into attending P.B. Harrington's funeral? Being bedridden simply meant that she channeled her considerable energy into staying connected to the life of Rayburn's Ferry by any means necessary. I was so used to saying yes, Grandma, from the time I could talk, that when I came home from college to work at Crawford & Associates, she managed to take over my life before I even realized what was happening. I hear what you're saying to yourself. She's a grown woman, a college graduate. Why doesn't she just say no? Well, I dare you to come by the house when Mary Ruth McCready really wants something done and see how you do. Right. I'll save you a seat at the next funeral she makes you attend.